What makes iMacs so special? This week, iMac turned 25. That's right, the Mac that started out life as a fun, all-in-one computer that was right for practically everyone, grew from being a colourful plaything to a pro-level workhorse. But as it's so universally adored, why did Apple decide to retire the 27-inch version altogether and not bother to touch the 24-inch model since its release in 2021? That's what we're going to find out. Hi, I'm David.
Is iMac.
Every week you'll find me here talking Apple, bringing you the latest news and trying hard to keep tech as easy as possible. The iMac was the first major product to be released after Steve Jobs returned to the company in 1998. When he got back to his desk, he was shocked to see just how many products Apple had in their range. And apart from slimming down the top-heavy management ranks, his next job was to thin out the products they had on sale. Don't forget, this was at a time when Apple was very, very fragile and nearly folded. They slumped from selling 4.5 million units in 1995 to just 1.8 million units 2 years later. Their products were too expensive, hard to understand, and complicated. The iMac was first shown to the world on 6th of May 1998 at the same space, the Flint Center for the Performing Arts at the De Anza College, where the original Macintosh 128K had been launched. In the audience that May day were founding team members of that first Macintosh, Steve Wozniak, Mike Markula, and Michael Scott. The iMac fitted perfectly into Jobs' vision of what Apple needed to be if they were to regain their crown. That vision was to create a consumer-level Mac that was simple to use, easy to get online, and relatively inexpensive. I'm guessing if you've clicked on this thumbnail, there's a good chance that you've owned an iMac. I've had 3 and I've loved all of them. It's odd, but of all the Macs I've owned, it's the iMacs have had that X factor about them. As to why that is, or at least why I think it is, I'll come back to. But what is it that makes these Macs so special? My first Mac was that one behind me, that little MacBook Air, and the second was the 2012 21.5-inch iMac over there. And after buying and using that one, I only worked on iMacs for the next 10 years. That's how much I love them. The first iconic teardrop-shaped G3 Mac was designed by Johnny Ive at the meeting where Steve Jobs was reintroduced as the chairman CEO. Johnny Ive was absolutely in awe of how much Jobs saw design as being a core part of Apple's comeback plan. At that meeting, Ive made a mental note of it, and for over a decade, of course, they were to become inseparable, dreaming up award-winning design after design. The original iMac was a massive and bold departure from what had gone before. Gone were the traditional boring beige bodies and floppy disk drives, and in their place came sleek, funky colours, USB ports and CD-ROMs.
Hey, do you ever ask anybody what their favorite color is? I'm sure you have, or people have asked you. It's not the most interesting question, but how many times do you say beige? Never. Because it's one of the worst colors. It's hardly even a color. It's like oatmeal or sand, or it's nothing. It's beige, it's boring, it's bland. Now computers, why in heaven's name have the people who've made computers before never done anything but beige? That's nuts. That's nuts. Have they been in thinking jail? That's crazy.
Although at the time it was a risky move, it's proven to be the right course to take. That Bondi Blue Mac cost $1,299 and shipped with 32 megs of RAM and 4 gigs of storage. But importantly, it was the start of the iMac era.
I'm so excited about this. You know how easy it is to take your home videos and turn them into movies? Listen to this. You get an iMac, of course, get your digital video camera, hook it up, and start iMovie. They've got effects in there now. You can, make it real fast. Ooh. Or get slow motion, make it dramatic. Or you can take a piece of music, put it under your footage, and all of a sudden, people are laughing, crying. I don't know, whatever you want. I've got cheesy ideas, but you'll do something creative that'll make you want to go, ooh, let's watch that again and again and again and again.
The name iMac is not the one that Jobs had originally intended for this Mac. A man named Ken Siegel, who worked at the LA agency that had been hired to create the marketing campaign for this new Mac, pitched the name iMac to Jobs. At first, apparently, he wasn't impressed, but after a few meetings, Jobs agreed it was better than name the one that he'd chosen, which was to be the Macman. Yep, that's right. The campaign clearly worked well as the G3 sold 280,000 units in its first 6 weeks. The budget for the campaign was $100 million, and Jeff Goldblum was hired as the face and voice for the ads, in which he jokingly asked if other companies had been in computer thinking jail and spoke about the iMac being about as un-PC as you could get.
The PC, perpetually complicated, profusely corded, physically conspicuous, particularly costly. Oh, and then there's the new iMac, which is about as un-PC as you can get.
Other highlights of that campaign were a midnight launch event, and also golden tickets were hidden in a few Macs. And if you were lucky enough to find one in your Mac, you won a factory tour of the Apple facility. Jobs realised just how important the internet and easy connection to it was about to become. And as far as he could tell, there were no other desktops around that were optimised and online ready. So, as another one of the strap lines of the day said, there was, or is, no step 3.
Presenting 3 easy steps to the internet. Step 1. Plug in. Step 2. Get connected. Step 3. There's no step 3. There's no step 3.
That first G3 with its 15-inch screen went on sale 3 months later on the 15th of August 1998 and lasted until 2002 when it was replaced by the G4. The G4 had another radical look and redesign, with all components now being in a dome-shaped base, with the screen being fully articulated via a chrome arm. It was as if the screen was floating in mid-air. The G4 came in 3 sizes, a 15, 17 and 20-inch, and had a massive 40 gigs of storage. The playful ads of the time showed off the new iMac in just the way that Jobs and Ive had intended. A few years later, Apple completely changed the look of iMac again as it began to transition to the shape we associate with it now. With the G5, all the workings were now behind the screen and would eventually be the first Mac to use Intel inside. It came in either a 17 or 20-inch body with significant bumps to the specs that included a 1.6 gig G5 PowerPC processor and up to 80 gigs of storage. In 2005, that G5 got an integrated iSight camera, and you could now spec the storage all the way up to 500 gigs. That transition was completed in 2007 when the white polycarbonate plastic gave way to the now familiar anodized iron aluminum casting, and was the first time that we saw the Magic Mouse and Magic Keyboard used together, and it was the first model that came with 1 gig of RAM, and you could now choose to spec it with up to a terabyte of storage at a starting price of $1,099. In 2009, iMac got the Unibody with the now famous end-to-end screen. The most important thing about the 2009 iMac was possibly its groundbreaking display. It was the first 16:9 ratio panel that, of course, is now standard. It was the 7th iteration of the late 2012 iMac, which saw it getting a new display panel and a slightly revised shape. It was thinner at the edge, but at the same maximum depth, and had the fastest processor yet, an Intel Core i5. It shipped with 8 gigs of memory and a terabyte of Fusion Drive storage, which was a mix of hard disk drive and an SSD, if you remember. And it was now with that slim unibody shape that we got our hands on the 27-inch iMac for the first time. Until then, of course, they'd only been available in the 21.5-inch model size. I know this week's video is a bit different, but I thought 25 years of iMac really deserved to be highlighted and relived. As you know, over recent weeks, we've looked at MacBooks, AirPods Max, and of course the headset too. Last week, I even had a 3D model printed of it. So all I was going to say was, if you're enjoying what's been going on here on the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And like, honestly, I can't tell you the difference that all makes. iMacs carried on selling well, and Apple continued to make meaningful updates to the ever-popular desktop Mac. In 2014, the 27-inch model was given a 5K Retina display, and the smaller model, a 4K Retina display. The Pro model was also launched in 2017 and was powered by a 3.2 gig Xeon processor, which turned out to be the last ever iMac that came with an Intel processor. The specs were insane: 32 gigs of RAM, an 8 gig Radeon Pro Vega video card, and a terabyte of lightning fast SSD storage. At a starting price of $4,999, it was heading into Mac Pro territory. Not satisfied though, another 2 years later, Apple gave you the option to up the RAM to 256 gigs, and you could opt for another 8 gigs of video graphics run too via its Radeon Pro Vega 64X card. Believe it or not, fully tripped out, this iMac Pro could have cost you $14,299. In 2021, iMac was given another new lease of life, this time with Apple Silicon. To mark the new release and to further cement Jobs' original intentions for this to be a consumer-level Mac, it shipped with a choice of 7 colours as a nod back to its heritage, and also it got a larger 24-inch 4.5K Retina panel. The 24-inch iMac was one of the first models to receive the M1 Apple Silicon chip, as the company transitioned away from Intel to using their homegrown alternative, and was estimated that this entry-level M1 iMac may be as much as 85% faster than that iMac Pro I was just talking about. The use of Apple Silicon was a huge win for iMac. It meant it could now be much slimmer, considerably quieter, and much more powerful. Although the specs said it only had 8 gigs of RAM, as we now know in these days of SoC and M-series chips, that 8 gigs doesn't mimic what 8 gigs used to be like in those old pre-Apple Silicon Intel days. Since its release though, it's received no further updates, which is a little unusual as Macs tend to be on a 2-year refresh cycle. Yes, I know, we've been through the pandemic and we've had massive supply chain issues since it was first released, but it's now due to be brought back up to date. And the good news is, I think we can finally expect something new for iMac sometime this year. With Apple's M3 chip likely to be unveiled in the fall, it's more than likely that the 24-inch iMac may well be one of the first lucky recipients of it. As for the larger iMac, well, the 27-inch iMac was quietly removed by Apple 1 year after the M1 iMac was released, and since, the 24-inch model has been the only one available. With the old 27-inch iMac and iMac Pro effectively being replaced by the Mac Studio and Studio Display combo, it's still unclear whether we'll ever see a return of a large M-powered 27-inch iMac. The crazy thing is, it's still one of the prettiest range of Macs to have ever been sold. In all, I've owned 3 iMacs and I still have 2 of them. That's not only testimony to how good they are, but also the affinity I have with them. I love working on iMacs. For some reason, they just feel like a proper Mac. I can't describe it, but they just feel, I don't know, more Mac-y, I suppose. It's only been in the last few weeks that I've finally stopped working on my 2015 5K iMac daily, but it's going nowhere, I promise you. I simply love it to bits. My base model MacBook Air is now quicker and way quieter than that 27-inch iMac, but in a heartbeat, I can tell you which one I love more. Somehow, iMac sort of sums up what Macs are to me. MacBooks and MacBook Airs are well and good, but to me, and maybe to many of you too, iMac is the quintessential Mac. The iMac that started life as Apple's fun all-in-one computer, which was right for practically everyone, but ended up growing into something special. The iMac and the iPhone possibly saved Apple from financial ruin and helped them go on to become what they are today. Designs like iMac don't come along very often. Tactile, beautiful, and iconic. Happy 25th birthday, iMac. To me, iMac is Mac. I'll catch you next time.